Hi, I'm Nicolette Gibson, Executive Director of MoCAPE, the Missouri chapter for the Council of American Private Education, and I'm here with our president, Al Freeman, and we're going to talk today about how private schools are responding to the COVID-19 pandemic.
As Nicolette stated, my name is Al Freeman, and I currently serve as president of MoCAPE, the Missouri Council of American Private Education, which is an offshoot of the national body of CAPE. I serve also as director of Lutheran schools for the Missouri District. That encompasses 111 schools from early childhood through high school.
Al, working with schools across the state as we have been these past few weeks, months, it seems like our private schools are really stepping up to the challenges presented by the pandemic and the shutdown of our schools. Do you want to talk specifically about some of the stories you've heard of how schools have stepped up to the plate to make sure that their communities and students are still getting the education and resources that they need?
It's pretty amazing how our schools have made the transition to an alternate learning environment, a modified learning environment, call it whatever you want. But there has been a great transition by our schools, by our teachers, going from in-person education in what we're familiar with and used to changing very quickly to delivering education in an online format and at-home format. We've had schools that, as you know, deliver packets, learning packets to students and to families. They've created courses with online delivery with Zoom or other learning management systems. And they change very quickly. What never did change, though, was the care and concern and the love expressed to the students. That's why we're in the education profession. We want to see our students grow and develop and to be cared for. And it's been amazing as our teachers do that in an environment they're not used to, but they still are bringing learning, caring, growth, all those things that make non-public schools a special environment. So we give thanks to our educators, to our principals, as they're able to shift very, very quickly. I mean, what did we shift, Nicolette? About 24 hours and maybe
It really
48
happened
hours.
very quickly. I know that some of our schools were on spring break and we had teachers coming back early from their break time to prepare materials and to go into schools and pack up students' materials so that they could come do pickups. It was really an amazing thing to watch on my end, both as a parent and as a part of our community, just how quickly people got into action, how organized. Wasn't surprised. Teachers usually are a pretty organized group of people, but the lines that they were able to create, schedules to come pick up your child's things in safe ways. It was really remarkable. I think what touched me the most were our schools that serve underprivileged populations of students, how they reached out immediately to make sure that basic needs were being met, that students had the food that they need, that families had the supplies that they needed before even really getting into the academic piece of things. So it's been really remarkable to see, like you said, all the ways that teachers are reaching out and making sure that they stay connected with their students. I've seen everything from parades where teachers will line up 10 feet apart around the parking lot so that kids can drive through. And then the opposite, where I know this week we had Teacher Appreciation Week, and many of our students did parades by their teacher's house to show their signs of support as well, and drop off small gifts or just honk and wave and remember each other during this time of separation. I've also been really excited to see how much teletherapy has been available to our students. So our counselors making themselves available to families to give that support to our students, because this is a really difficult time for all of us, and being isolated at home, away from our peers, away from sports, all of the things that really students are looking forward to, our kids are looking forward to in the spring, sports and graduations, milestones that they are going to have to alter how they celebrate. And so our counselors being available to our students and families through teletherapy has also been a really great blessing to our communities.
Many of our schools turned into food distribution points immediately to help families, and great to see just again what our schools are known for: the caring, the passion, the seeing what they can do for community, for families, for students, and that transition. And it probably did, for a lot of our schools, take place at there's never a good time, but at a time when some were on spring break. So that did give a little extra preparation, but still, the ability to alter delivery so quickly is just amazing what our schools were able to do.
And across such diverse communities. So our schools are located in urban areas and suburban areas and rural areas. We have large schools, small schools, and it seemed like the one common theme throughout was just everybody's ability to be flexible and learn new things. I think that's been the other lesson through this is teachers have had to really learn very quickly how to move to online delivery formats. And so I think they've developed a certain empathy for their students, remembering what it's like to learn something new every day, all day long. And I've heard several teachers say to me, I forgot how much work this is. This is exhausting. And so I think there is an appreciation from parents about what it is our teachers do all day, and an appreciation for how hard it is for our students to learn throughout the day, all the new things that they're trying to absorb and take in. So it's been, it's been a really challenging experience, but one with a lot of positive outcomes as far as connectivity and learning new things and growing together. So those are exciting developments.
That's a great point. As educators, we're always lifelong learners, and we saw that in action over the last several weeks here of necessity of lifelong learning and transitioning, and necessity being the mother of all inventions, right? As we know that great phrase. Uh, Teachers who maybe were teaching for 20 some, 30 some, even 40 some years, who perhaps were resistant to utilization of technology, and even at times would say, oh, I'll retire before I have to do that. Uh, when it comes to their students and to families and serving them, the mere fact that this is what we have to do, they were all in right away.
Well, and I think too, to acknowledge that what teachers do for online learning is very different than what they're doing in the classroom, and without a lot of those same rewards that they get. So, our teachers enjoy being with their students and they enjoy that connectivity. And I think it's been really challenging for them to prepare lessons and to do all of those things that, they're used to doing, but in a new format, but not really having that connection with their students. And so you're right, regardless of the challenges, they have just stepped up to the plate and made sure that whatever their students needed, they were there to do that, whether it was providing, like you said, meals. Many of our schools are still providing meals to families, or Chromebooks or other technology supports. And in many cases, some of our students just don't have the technology. Maybe they're in a home with limited ability to connect to the internet. And so creating packets, games, I know that a lot of our schools are checking out games and library books and making sure that when they gathered those materials, they were thinking long-term about all the different things that students might need to learn beyond just what they could get on a computer. So we're an innovative people, and I think that this has really shined a light on, how innovative we can be and creative we can be in meeting the needs of our kids. So Al, let's transition a little bit and talk about some of the challenges that this pandemic has presented to our schools beyond just, closing and moving to online learning. There are some other challenges. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
With the challenges that we've seen with our non-public schools is challenges of financial instability that this brings. It's the challenges of enrollment. It's the challenges of trying to figure out programs with the CARES Act and PPP and some of these other programs that are coming from the federal government to provide for sustainability and continue employment for teachers
Right.
at all levels, which obviously we can't deliver education without revenue from tuition coming in, and with donors and families and what has happened to the economy immensely impacts all of our schools. As we know, most of our schools are provided for by congregations and parishes. So a lot of the dollars to operate schools are not coming from tuition revenue, but rather support from other entities or donors that add to that as well. Tuition makes up just a portion of the overall revenue that's coming in. So all of that is hit at one time. As our schools move forward, our concerns are around solidifying enrollment, uh, preparations for next school year and what that will look like in terms of finances coming in, financial support from parishes and congregations, from donors that perhaps have seen their uh, stock market investments plunge a great deal, and the unknown that that brings. So there's a lot of concerns with that, and how do we solidify our schools to make sure that we're able to do what we do each and every day.
Well, when we talk about, families facing financial hardships, we definitely don't want to add stress to families right now by having to transition students out of our schools because they can't afford the tuition. And so, at a time where our families are most in need, as you've said, our churches have been closed now for several weeks. That impacts contributions to the church. Foundations had to cancel their fundraisers. Our schools had to cancel spring fundraisers as well.
Mhm.
And so there isn't a lot of reserve because our schools run on a pretty tight budget as it is. They don't typically have a lot in reserve to begin with. And we make a lot happen with every dollar, but unfortunately, there's just not that same reserve or cushion for our schools. And then when we have families coming and saying, we as a family have been hit, economically through job loss or wage loss, and our ability to pay tuition. It is going to be a really challenging time to try to keep our learning community intact so that we can, move past this into better days for sure.
Absolutely, yes, and it is a matter of financial sustainability long term. And most of our schools keep the tuition rates fairly low. It's not what covers the cost to educate a child. So there's so many layers to that financial puzzle. So all of our schools will have to look at that and continue to seek ways to financially help families to continue to attend our schools that we know.
Well, and I think the average tuition for a K to 8 school, private school in our state right now is between $3,000 and $5,000, which is nowhere near the cost to educate a student. Our high schools typically are a little bit more than that, but the cost to educate students for the state for in a public school is around $11,000. And so, like you said, we layer those funding. It's not just tuition. I think that sometimes people have this misconception that people that attend private schools are wealthy and they pay a high tuition rate. And sometimes that is the case, but more often than not, we have students who are paying a modest tuition to offset the cost of their education. In some of our schools, we still have tithe-based tuition, where if you're supporting your church through your tithe, then your children can attend to that private school without additional tuition cost. And so our families really are a reflection of the communities where they live, which means that we serve a diverse group of families. We serve people from all economic statuses, from all backgrounds and walks of life. And it's not just an elite group of people that are attending our private schools, but people from every community really participate in both faith-based and independent schools that best meet the needs of their family. And we want that to continue for our students so that they have that continuity in their life, especially in this uncertain time.
We serve all families, and it's families who are choosing the best school fit for their child and for their family. We aim to provide that ability to choose the best possible environment for their child, so the child can grow and flourish and use all of their talents and abilities that they've been given. So there is a school choice that's out there, and you can find a school that meets your needs, the needs of your child, the needs of your family, across the board. And we're all working together, right? I mean, that's the thing about MoCape. We are here to work with families. We're here to work with schools. We're here to provide the best choices and the best options for families.
Absolutely. And I think that if somebody's watching this and they want to support our schools, now is the time to do so, because our scholarships and our schools are going to need that additional support. What we are anticipating is a decrease in enrollment, and that will impact our communities. It will impact those students' lives to leave their school, but will also impact our schools' abilities to stay open. And we want to make sure that we maintain, that community, that stable environment for our kids as much as possible.
It impacts public schools too, right? Because if our students leave, if our families leave our non-public schools, for the public school, all of a sudden it increases the cost to those public schools as well.
Let's talk a little bit about, other than financial, some of the other, other than tuition costs, some of the other costs that schools are going to be dealing with as they continue to work through this pandemic. I know that, right now our schools are looking, we've shut down pretty quickly and we're reopening much slower. We want to be cautious in how we reopen summer programs, early childhood centers, and even as we're looking into the fall, what that will look like. And there's a lot of unknowns. We still don't know how this is going to play out in different communities across the state. Let's talk a little bit about some of the anticipated needs that our schools are going to have as they move forward in this new environment.
There are a lot of unknowns. Some of the tools that we're using right now that companies have stepped up and offered for free, like Zoom, some other educational entities that have provided their resources for free to help out teachers at this point in time, probably will not be free next year. And schools will have to figure out a way, how do we pay for these resources if we have to transition once again to an e-learning format or at home modified learning format in some way.
Right.
These be significant cost factors, right? I mean, the idea of Zoom continuing accounts free of charge for educators, probably it will be a bunch of educator accounts that will cost for next year's budget.
So many companies stepped up and wanted to provide whatever they could to help families at this time. But long term, we are looking at a situation where we may either have extended periods of time where schools are shut down, or modified schedules where students are partially at home and partially at school so that they minimize the number of students in the building at any point in time. We're still looking at a lot of different options on how schools are going to manage this. Those technology resources are definitely at some point going to cost, and we need to start preparing for that. I think we also need to think about just the things like cleaning our schools and the increased cleaning that's going to be necessary when we do reopen, whether that's, increased staff to maintain those, those cleaning standards for our students, to keep our students and teachers safe, increased training for our teachers on how to keep themselves and their students safe. As our community continues to deal with this, we may have teachers or students that are out of school for extended periods of time. So we're looking at an increase in need for substitute teachers and ways to help students if they're gone from school for extended periods of time as well.
We're looking at hardware costs, software costs for computers, as you said, cleaning supplies and the use of that, because we know cleaning will be ramped up, right? So there'll be additional cleaning. I think you make a very good point on the need for substitute teachers coming in, more absences, just more absences of students as well, and the need for technology to perhaps even record lessons as students are gone from the classroom, and delivery, even if it's not in an e-learning format, caring for those students who could be gone for a period of time because of a family illness or their illness. Professional development. I think a lot of people will be doing professional development on e-learning and how to deliver in this new format in an effective way. While we've done a great job in the immediate turnaround, as you mentioned earlier, there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more to effective delivery of e-learning. So we have to prep our teachers for that as well. Should this occur again, there is a possibility of rolling closures coming in the fall, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, maybe nothing. Hopefully
Right.
that's the case, and we have a so-called normal school year, but we have to be ready for that. So there's an expense of that as well, and an ongoing expense, because you don't do professional development in 3 days before the school year starts and call it good.
Absolutely. I think we also need to really keep in mind our students who are at risk and make sure that we have plans in place to help remediate. We want to make sure that that gap doesn't widen, that we make sure that they get whatever supports they need as we move forward into the next school year to keep up and to regain any loss that they had over this time. So that'll be another focus of how we manage our staff and provide professional development. This was a shock to our entire worldwide community. Nobody, I think, was really prepared for something like this. And as a result, all of our students and parents and teachers have been deeply impacted by this. And there is going to be an increase in anxiety. And how do we prepare for that and prepare our schools to be a place where we can support teachers and students and families and give them the cushion and the love and support and tools that they need to really effectively deal with all of the many emotions that they're going to be feeling as we return in whatever capacity.
Which is an increased cost factor as well.
Absolutely.
A lot of our schools will be looking to bring in individuals that are therapists or school counselors and such to care for teachers and the students and the community as well. I mean, this reverberates throughout. So, and that's a strength of our schools also. It's about relationships. You know, you talk about our non-public schools, and that's a phrase you hear all the time. It's family, it's relationships. I see teachers on different Facebook pages, and they all are talking about how they miss their students. They miss being physically around students and caring for them. And they are emotionally drained at this point in time because they can't do that. You know, early childhood educators who all they want to do is just hug the kids and care for them and be in play groups and just watch the progression. And elementary teachers, middle school teachers, which you talk about, you know, middle school is such a transition, and the teacher being so important in developing the social skills and the skills to manage conflict and everything else that happens beyond the classroom. You know, a lot of times we think of teaching being the delivery of a subject, or it's the coaching of a sport, or it's sponsoring drama or whatever else. Really, there's so much more as well. There's the social side of education and conflicts that occur, and developing in our students successful conflict resolution and making of friends and growth. You know, we always talk about it, growth academically, socially, physically, many of
Absolutely.
our schools spiritually. And, you know, that's still happening in unique ways with this e-learning, but it happens throughout our schools in such amazing ways. And our teachers are really yearning to have that back.
You know, kids missed out on a lot. And it's been really amazing to me, just the awareness that people have had. If you look on Facebook, if you look at, I think they're even going to be broadcasting Graduation 2020 live nationally with everybody. I think there is such an awareness. I'm so proud of our entire community to recognize that these things are important in the lives of our students and our children, and the loss of them impacts them. And I think everybody has made such an effort to acknowledge that. I know that I've seen schools that have delivered graduation signs and treats to their kids and in socially safe ways, and you know, trying to figure out online graduations or waiting out to see if we can do in-person graduations, but really not dismissing those important milestones for our kids, and acknowledging that in the year to come, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty for that next round of students that's going through those same transitions. So I've been really impressed overall, just that people are aware that this is impacting our children. For some of them, this has been a very lonely time. You know, if they don't have siblings at home, or if they weren't, you know, blessed with those playmates that they live with, and they have parents that are working, this can be a really, you know, lonely time for them. But I think that technology has allowed us to stay connected, and our schools have provided a safe environment for our children to connect with each other and with the trusted adults in their life. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done in that regard.
I think our schools have also done a great job of reaching out to teachers, you know, teacher appreciation signs that we see in yards, and finding unique ways to celebrate what they do.
I think that people are becoming more aware that our teachers are educators, but they're educated in educating. And so it's not something that you can just necessarily pick up and do, but it really is a matter of years of training and continued professional development that allow our teachers to reach our students in the ways that they do, and really to ensure their successes as learners and to provide that community. I just don't think we can get away from the fact that that's what our schools are. They're communities. They're communities for our students. And hopefully our kids have felt that love and support, and our teachers have felt that, although not always perfect, in the best ways that we can manage right now in this really difficult time.
I've seen some amazing work by the teachers. I know that I've seen uh, online autopsies done for anatomy classes. I've seen printing of PPE equipment delivered
Yeah.
to different agencies, and whether it be medical centers or fire stations, whatever's the case. A lot of our schools have been doing that with their STEM programs. We've seen drive-through lunch delivery, the parades that you talked about. The creativity abounds. I'm so amazed and impressed. It's again, it shows the bottom line, the caring, the relationships, the concern that is there for students to have an experience, an educational experience, and to do it in a new way, but to be creative and think about how they can be cared for.
Each one of our teachers was preparing a day's worth of work for our students every day. And, our schools aren't really set up the way public districts are, where we can provide, okay, here's first grade lessons for the entire community. It really was very individualized to those specific classes of students. I think the other thing that we were able to do because of our flexibility is provide for our students with academic needs. I know that many of my schools, especially here in Kansas City, we have a large number, 10 to 12% of our student population has an identified special education need. And we were immediately able to jump into action and figure out, new ways to make sure that those students had the learning environment that they needed, the learning support that they needed, whether it was through paraprofessionals zooming in and working with them via teleconference that way to make sure that their work was done. For some of our students with more significant needs like Down syndrome, teachers were putting together packets for, here are games that you can play with your family that will keep you learning. Here are things that really were applicable to them, as opposed to trying to have one of those students sit down on a Zoom and continue their learning. But really just being able to be flexible and know that we could meet the needs of each of our students, maybe again, not perfectly, but in a way that helped them to continue their learning throughout this time.
Something our schools excel at: personalized learning. Knowing each child, knowing the needs and caring for those needs. And again, it's never perfect, but we're always approaching trying to meet excellence at all times.
Well, Al, thank you so much for your time today. I'm so glad we were able to get together and share with everybody what the great things are happening in our schools and our private schools in Missouri. I'm just so impressed. Again, I'm Nicolette Gibson, Executive Director of MOCAPE. We represent 80,000 private school students here in the state of Missouri, and I'm with our president, Al Freeman, also the director for the Missouri Lutheran Schools, and just so excited to spend that time with you. Thanks again, and have a great day.